Hi there. Robin Short, National Nightly News. I was wondering if I could get your thoughts on the current government.
I'm not really very interested in politics, really. As Mother always said, leave politics to the politicians, Malcolm.
Putting the grown-ups to shame.
Hello everyone, I'm Stibby, and this is my YouTube channel. I want to talk today about the game Not For Broadcast, because it might be my game of the year for 2022. Not For Broadcast is an FMV game that released, or at least left early access, in 2022. In it, you play as Alex, who happens to become the editor of a news station after the old editor fled the country. Most of the game is spent in this broadcast mode, where you dictate what you want to show and what you want to censor. Then various levels have different gimmicks that try to throw you off. You get a score at the end of every segment that is calculated by audience retention based on a number of factors. And while it's easy to get a low score, it's quite a bit harder to actually fail a segment. The main draw of the game is that your choice of what to show and how to edit things affects the universe the game takes place in. The other maybe 20% of the game is spent in these text adventure segments between the broadcast segments, which are pretty standard visual novel, pick a dialogue option type affairs where you pick whatever you want and it moves the story along. Interestingly enough, at first I wasn't really vibing with this game at all. I found the broadcast segments stressful and hard to pay attention to the actual dialogue of. I had to keep so many different gameplay things in mind that I would frequently miss or only half listen to things that were said, and then I wouldn't fully comprehend the choices I was making or what they might mean. And while the broadcast segments were too engaging, I didn't find the text adventure segments engaging enough. I didn't really care about the fake family that Alex starts the game with, given that I'd barely interacted with them outside of a major moment here or there for most of the beginning of the game. And that was just the totality of my experience in the beginning, feeling stressed out and not super emotionally invested, which is not a great combination for me in most games. And during this time, I kept thinking back to my time with another game, Papers, Please. For anyone that doesn't know, Papers, Please is a widely celebrated indie game from 2013 where you play as a TSA agent at an airport of a country that goes under martial law. The crux of Papers, Please is a puzzle game where you have to cross-check a bunch of rules given to you by the government for each passenger that you check through, and figure out which passengers to accept and which to reject. You make money at the end of each, I guess you would call them levels or days, based on how many people you successfully check, and you use that money to buy food for your quote-unquote family, which are basically just cost numbers that, as far as I remember, you don't really have any interaction with. There is some level of narrative decision-making in that you can ultimately choose who you let through and who you don't, and the game will never fail you. It will just dock progressively more of your pay the more people you check incorrectly. I had a similar issue with Papers, Please as I had at the very beginning of Not For Broadcast, where I was very stressed out and not super emotionally invested. Then, to top it off, aside from not feeling emotionally invested, I felt guilty for not feeling emotionally invested, because my brain is broken. I never actually ended up finishing Papers, Please, and while I'm not opposed to returning to it one day, as of right now, that's how my story with it ends. As those same problems started creeping up for me in Not For Broadcast, I thought about quitting it as well. What kept me pushing on is my love for FMV games mixed with how captivated I was by the very premise. Until a few missions in, I got this cutscene.
So I wondered if I might have a word. You see, I've had my eye on you, friend, and I've got to say I'm not liking what I'm seeing. You keep letting me down, chum. Playing it safe. Making the dull, boring choices, failing to assert yourself. Don't you care where your sun goes at night? You will when you find out. Look, far be it from me to try and lead you down the dark pathway, although sort of is my whole raison d'etre. But imagine, just for a moment, that none of this was real. It was just some stupid game where you could just do it all over again if it all went wrong. Imagine if Sam and Charlie and Susie were just characters. Wow. Think of all the fun you could have. Just being bad, you know, for the hell of it. My name's Megan Wolf. Have an evil night.
It's interesting because this scene changes based on the choices you made up to that point of the game, so I could have not gotten this scene at all. But for whatever reason, my brain registered that line as permission from the game to not have to take it all so seriously. And after I had that permission, I was able to relax enough to allow myself to actually learn the mechanics of the game. And once I learn the mechanics, I can start actually becoming invested in the story and universe. The nation where this game takes place is on the verge of welcoming in a new governmental leadership when you start, by the new majority party, Advance. There are a lot of characters in this, but the most central ones are Advance leadership, which consists of Peter Clemens and Julia Salisbury. There's also your primary news anchor, Jeremy Donaldson, and the ambitious upcoming news anchor, Megan Wolf. And there's the backstage VP, Jenny, the manager of the news station you work at, Bozeman, and Alan James, who is an Alex Jones-type conspiracy theorist turned disrupt operative, but we'll get to there. Aside from that, there's an assortment of on-site reporters, musical guests, and experts in various fields. The central conflict of this game is really interesting to me on a personal level because the majority party, Advance's, ideas are generally really good. They are, for all intents and purposes, a socialist party. They stand for a hardcore wealth redistribution as well as assurance that all citizens have their basic needs met. Unfortunately, Advance is also extremely nationalistic and militaristic, and as the game progresses, you see the nation you're living in increasingly become a police state. Another thing I should mention before diving too deep into specifics is that the soundtrack on this game is fantastic. There are a number of different musical guest segments in the game that are complete with their own musical number, so the soundtrack spans a lot of different styles, from rap to boy bands. And it's all done in-universe regarding events that are currently happening in the story and game. And I think here's where I'm going to get into some heavy spoiler territory. So if I've completely sold you on the game and you want to jump in entirely fresh, you might want to stop watching now. I should mention that there's no way I could spoil everything in this game even if I wanted to, considering the number of different routes and how things can change on both a small and large scale throughout the game based on your choices. And you could potentially have a completely different experience than I had playing it. But if you want to go in completely blind, now's a good time to skip ahead. Alright, let's get into specifics. The news station that you work for is owned by Advance. And as the game progresses, they get a bit more hands-on about what they want you to censor and things that they want you to play. So, the initial most sympathetic character, for me at least, and the character you spend the most time with is Jeremy Donaldson. Now, Alex is the actual protagonist of the game, but Alex isn't really a character. He's a pure player avatar. Alex is there to enact your visions onto the plot. Whereas Jeremy Donaldson is a real character, he has his own motivations and ideals, and at the very beginning of the game, he's kind of the default protagonist because of it. And as far as the general goals of Advance goes, Jeremy seems very much in favor. He fought against Alan James, screaming about government tyranny early on. I mean, this is just speaking from my personal taste, but I find Jeremy very likable. He's sardonic and biting, and he genuinely cares about his job. However, as policies get more restrictive, particularly when they start trying to censor people's ideals on the news program, he becomes more and more disillusioned with Advance's vision, until, well...
I was going to quit tonight. Take a holiday. Try something else. Out of the limelight. Maybe try having a relationship. I hear they're nice. Never tried it. I loved the news. And now, well...
God, Jeremy, don't!
I've tried my best to be honest with you, but this just isn't the news anymore. And I'm
Cut to
sorry.
the ads!
I've lost this fight.
Alex! Cut to the ads!
I've let you down.
Please, we can't show
All
this.
of
Cut
you.
to the ads!
My name's Jamie
Now!
Donaldson.
Do it now!
If you can, somehow. And I envy you if you can. Have a peaceful night.
Jeremy!
And I guess this brings me to the opposing force in the game, Disrupt, which starts out as a bunch of rich kids fighting to keep their wealth, and turns into the largest opposing anarchist faction to Advance, led by, well, as I said before, Alan James. Alan James is one of the game's most complex figures, and one that I'm not sure how I feel about. He starts the game as a clear analog to Alex Jones. It's present from his name to the way he speaks, and some sound bites are direct references to some of Jones's most famous moments.
This is the issue. It's all coming from the water, the chemicals. They're pumping it full of belief juice.
I'm like, oh, shocked by it, so I'm up here bashing it because I don't like gay people. I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that?
And that's more or less where my issue lies. An anti-establishment figure that speaks truth to power is certainly how figures like Alex Jones see themselves, or at very least how they would like to see themselves and how they present themselves, and this game effectively turns him into one. Now, I want to be clear, Alan James admits that before he became a Disrupt mouthpiece, he was a clown and a grifter who was only out to sell his book and supplements, which is exactly what Alex Jones is. I do have some discomfort in turning an Alex Jones type figure into a hero, although even the descriptor hero is in and of itself kind of in the eye of the beholder, as Disrupt is a militant force that does a lot of pretty shitty things to accomplish its goal, all of which is only arguably justified or even effective. Alan James and his followers also effectively turned Jeremy Donaldson's suicide into an act of martyrdom for the cause, which is almost certainly not something he ever would have wanted or liked. Things reach a fever pitch and get even more wild. There's a full-scale war outside of the nation, bombs go off, companies and individuals rise and fall, people do better or worse under certain conditions, and all of these issues are presented in full, complicated ways. Even near the end, when you think there's little more information they can give you in regards to your central choice, they throw an emotional curveball at you in an unexpected package. There's this teenage character who spends her entire appearance in the game being rude and obnoxious to basically everyone. But near the end of the segment, she gives a plea to support Advance that is so emotionally resonant and sincere that it made me stop and consider her perspective, even though I'd been fighting against Advance for basically my entire playthrough. While I knew I liked a lot of Advance's ideas in the abstract, there wasn't a lot of evidence of the tangible benefit they did to people's lives until her character showed up. I'm generally very confident with my decision-making in games, and this game did something that few other games have made me do, which was make me question myself and my convictions. Not for broadcast messed with my expectations many times. I found it fun, funny, and thought-provoking at its best. The more I've thought about it, the more I ended up really liking it, to the point that I wanted to make this video about it. And that's all I really had to say. I hope that this video is fun or interesting in some way, and from all of us here, have a peaceful night.
Life can be peachy keen if you work as a team. It's my choice to be mean.
choice.
Listen to that inner voice.
Hey, listen up, I won't take no crap. Who said middle class girls can't rap?
The God smiles like a million instas, breaking the heart of widows and spinsters, smashing it up on everyone's tinders, and they wanna kill you.